Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. I am here with another guest. I know that I am a broken record when I always say I'm excited for guests, and I truly am. That's why I have him on the show. And this guest is just another phenomenal voice. One, we've never actually been able to actually have verbal conversations, so this is exciting. And we've just recently kind of crossed paths, even though I think we have a lot of similar passions and interests, especially when it comes to education and STEM and robotics, which we're going to get into here in just a little bit. And what I'm really excited for is just the perspective, the lens from the global angle that this guest brings on, as well as just what she's doing. She's just kicking butt and taking names as in the entrepreneurial space, as well as trying to make an impact in education. And so it's just a nice intersection of, I think, of a lot of ideas and mindsets and skills and dispositions that I think for anyone listening is going to find this just a fascinating conversation. And so today I am here with Anna Iarotska, and she will help me pronounce that better. I was practicing ahead of time, and so I know names are important. And so, Anna, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. And before we get into all the fun and games, let's let everybody know who you are, what you do, and what in the world you got going on.
Oh, thank you. And it was a very good job pronouncing my name. Nothing to correct. So yeah, I'm Anna Iarotska. I'm co-founder and CEO of Robo Wunderkind. And Robo Wunderkind is a tech company. Our product is a robotics, coding, and STEM program for K-5. But what we actually do, we are blowing children's minds by giving them a possibility to build and program their own robots already at the age of 5. We believe this is very powerful. We know that this is very powerful. It helps create children like this positive idea about what they can do with technology and increase their self-efficacy for some careers. And it's also super, super fun. So we bring a lot of fun into the classroom. And the company started with a Kickstarter project in 2015. We were actually a bunch of ambitious people. Like, we had this idea, like, we want to make building robots accessible to very young children. And we pitched on Kickstarter building blocks for building robots. And that's Kickstarter community loved us. We raised 250,000 from backers from more than 50 countries. This was so encouraging. Actually, it happened like kind of overnight. Back then, we were based in Austria, and Kickstarter included our pitch into their newsletter. And for me, it was a night, and then I wake up, and actually we see we have so many backers, and we crossed 100,000, and it just keep coming. But then we also, there was a journey from a Kickstarter project to where we are now. We see ourselves as a solution provider for schools. We work together with school teams, helping them develop and grow their STEM ecosystem. So it is, of course, at the core of what we do is building blocks for building robots. Then we have visual apps for programming that don't require reading skills, standards aligned curriculum, and teacher training. So from building blocks for robots, we developed our thinking about what we do, and we also developed our product to make sure that we have everything a school would need to start a successful STEM and coding program.
Yeah, I love that, and I want to dive so much into what you have going on. And I know even here in Iowa, and we'll talk, it'll be in the show notes here. We'll come back to this too, just the opportunities that educators and schools have with the Iowa STEM Scale-Up Grant, as you are your company's part of the menu of options for educators, which is really, really exciting. But before we do that, then I want to make sure we definitely tackle that, because you've said some things in there that I think are really important. I want to know a little bit more about you, because you just didn't wake up and all of a sudden have an awesome Kickstarter campaign. Like you have a pretty awesome just journey yourself getting into this work. And so as I was prepping for the show and just learning more about you, you have I think a couple key things that I think all feed into why your product and work is so successful. And part of that is coming back from my kind of like comic book nerd utopia world of like, what's the origin story of the superhero? Can you talk a little bit about your own origin story? You have a global perspective, that not all of us have, which I think is a really, really key component as we think about not just product development and design, but just our approach to life and living. And not everybody has that. I know for me, I've lived in the state of Indiana and I moved just a couple of 100 miles over, and now I live in Iowa. So all I know is the Midwest, and you have such a larger landscape. So could you share a little bit about your origin story, your journey, and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm made in Ukraine person. I was born and grew up in Ukraine. And then with 20, I was actually finishing my bachelor studies, and there was an opportunity to go for 1 year exchange student to Germany, which was it was a lot of fun. I really grasped this opportunity, really enjoyed it. And I then decided to continue studies in Austria. And then I kind of it came one after another. So I finished my 1 year degree and started working in Austria. And I was working. So yeah, and here's the key thing. I was back in the days when I was picking up what I want to be. I actually didn't have that many smarter, I was kind of okay, I like math and English. What can we, and in Ukraine you have entry exams. And I was looking, so which studies, which degree asks for math and English as entry exams? And it was business. And I was okay, sounds good. Let's do international business. Years later, in my late 20s, when I actually started working, so I worked in investment management and consulting, and I came in touch with the world of technology, with the world of technology startups, which I found really fascinating. I was kind of but why? I actually never thought of me being able to become part of this as an engineer. Because, you can also join as a business person, but it's still I think being an engineer, it's kind of this is a super skill in my eyes. You can create technologies and products. And I was a bit annoyed by why I never considered it for myself, and was kind of looking back at my studies and my school experiences. I was of course, because I never had a thought that I can be an engineer never crossed my mind. I thought back then, and computer science was for me oh my God, this is so boring. This is for these geek guys. And definitely not for me. It sounds boring and theoretical. And I was kind of oh my gosh, if this happened to me, to how many people out there the same happened, that they just were choosing their career without really knowing of all the amazing possibilities that are out there, and only because they just didn't have exposure. That's what I personally wanted to change. I was thinking with all the technology development, how can we make sure that children don't miss out? And yeah, so my answer to that was, let's make sure they have a early exposure to technology, to computer science, to engineering in a very friendly and positive way. And then I was okay, how do we do that? Let's create a way for very young children to build and program their own robots.
Gosh, I love that so much. Thanks for sharing. And to kind of stack onto that, as I was looking through it, so you started to see the space, you started to get interested in this work, and then as I was looking, I seen that through your journey, you've also won numerous awards and recognitions for your work. And I noticed a lot of those are just, I shouldn't say just, that's not the right phrase, but they are in celebration of being a top influential or business person, and especially in the role of being a female. And so I think you've already kind of alluded to this a little bit, which is something that I think is really important. And I think about my own children. I have 2 daughters, and when I talk about STEM or computer sciences, and I think we'll probably keep coming back to this, is they don't know what they don't know. And the only thing they do know is whatever the societal norms might be. And so many kids automatically think they're not STEM, think they're not math, think they're not this, think they're not, and they haven't even tried or dabbled in it, which I think is what we'll talk about here a little bit, is the beauty of what you've created. But you have won some recognitions on that. So one, that's awesome and congratulations. But two, can you kind of speak to the importance of that? I mean, I think that's a through line, not just for the sake of females, but I think in this area, I think going to classrooms and students who are of the minority, things of that nature, like how do we help them see themselves in these roles? So can you speak to that? Because I think you're a living, breathing example of a female kicking butt and taking names and doing some incredible work.
Thank you. Yeah, so like I think like we always actually like this problem is so universal. We don't have enough computer science graduates. We don't have enough skilled engineers. We don't have also like we kind of like want to have more convinced every suitable male school graduate to like enter our studies if we need to expand. And that's why actually like if we want to have more computer science, skilled specialists, more engineers, and generally, if we want to increase also the share of entrepreneurs in our society, we need to make sure that minorities, underrepresented minorities, get a chance to be successful in those fields. And those underrepresented minorities are also girls and women, and also, as racial minorities. So, like we do see that, like Black American students are the share of Black American students going for STEM degrees is much lower than the share of white students and like white Caucasian students. So it's crucial. And like statistically speaking, this should be the same, right? Like if like those obstacles don't exist. So we need to make sure that we kind of like work on those obstacles, and those obstacles quite often are how much help from your family you get, how much exposure your school provides to you, and like also how many role models you see. And I personally like very happy, and that's why like I'm quite vocal about being an entrepreneur out there, because I hope that my example will be, and so I can be a role model for girls out there. But then also thinking about the racial minorities, like and like that's where like our work with communities comes in, because it's not just about like we need to like we try with our school districts we closely work with, that we find people from the community who can also come in and like give talks or be like at the STEM night, a guest at the STEM night, or like come in as via Zoom call and speak to school students and say, look, like I'm from your community, I'm like you can, you can relate to me, and I am a successful computer science engineer. And I think this is very, very important that we keep doing the work to just get, like the society has to be represented in among those who create technology, and that's important for so many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think about this, and I'm listening to your story, and you're talking about these spaces that are full of white people look like me, white males, right? This computer science space, people in these classes and these courses and these degrees and programs. How did you build the confidence, the awareness, or maybe there's another word where you're like, I'm going to enter this space? Because I'm assuming, I don't know your whole journey and trajectory, but I'm thinking about my own education. I wasn't exposed to STEM and robotics and coding when I was young, and it just wasn't a thing like it is now. But here you've kind of broken the glass ceiling, so to speak. You're a CEO of this company that's doing incredible STEM outreach and work for schools to kind of work through that. But how did you work through your own mindset and get into that space? Because I also think like we read it, we understand it, but it's another thing to actually like put our ideas into action and do it.
Yeah, so like, I think there was a couple of factors. So first of all, it took me also quite some time. I started the company in my late 20s. Like, so in, actually I was already 30. Sorry, like you see, like there wasn't this idea going on, and so it definitely took me some time as well. And like when I look at some graduates who are now like, considering founding their company straight out of the university, I'm thinking like, great, like, so we did some good work in the meantime. So like that we have this youngsters considering it that early in their careers. But for me, I think a couple of factors were like, so first, like Kickstarter support, because we didn't know, like this campaign could have failed and we would be like, okay, it didn't work out. But like the support of the community, Kickstarter community, saying this is a great idea. And then we also, very early in our journey, we joined an accelerator, hardware accelerator, and we relocated to China for 4 months. And that was super, super helpful. So I think like this type of supporting structures where in the program we were 10 startups, we all were asked to relocate to China. And then we lived there and worked for 4 months straight. And like we mostly worked, like it was a lot of work, but when you're like 10 teams together, you don't feel like you are the only crazy person working nonstop. It's just like there are 10, like many of us. And that was super, super helpful in terms of kind of just learning from each other, like, supporting each other, and also, pushing each other, because there's always a competitive spirit as well in such things. And then it's, it's a journey. And I think everyone goes, the only person you need to compare yourself is to how you were, yesterday or the year before. So it's about personal journey and kind of like being inspired by others, thinking how you could learn, but also not just like continuously, oh, they're so great and I'm not, but like kind of like where I, just thinking about all the way you as a personality or I as a personality had to go through and kind of like step by step growing. But then, I mean, of course, like there is a certain, being brave. And I think that's definitely, one feature which is required, because indeed, like I, as a student, with 20, I went to Austria, to Europe, build up my life and career there. And then at some point we saw that actually we have a huge demand on the US market, and we decided to focus on the US market. And I relocated with my family to Washington, DC. So I'm now, this year I'm based in Washington, DC. Actually, like it's we relocated now for 1 year, and like we'll probably stay longer. We'll see. But I'm kind of like, like the world is full of opportunities. I really enjoy living in different cultures, and I'm very happy to contribute to where I can to create an impact with my life work.
Yeah, gosh, that's so fascinating. So you've been stateside for a year, and you've been to these other places. So as we start to think about your company and what you're trying to do, especially for the littles, the younger kids, and getting robotics and the coding and the writing and all that stuff into the space. Do you see similarities regardless of where you go? Are there differences in terms of how other countries are approaching STEM and computer science? Is it all kind of the same kind of universal issues? Because you've had a chance to kind of dabble in those places. I mean, I know what's happening in Iowa. I would say a pretty good sense of kind of what the United States is thinking and doing. I know every place is slightly different, but do you see similarities or differences, or
so
as you've been trying to pivot?
Yeah. So something what I definitely notice is, and like this is, for example, like a challenge which Austria also faces. There is a huge proportion of English language learners in elementary schools, and that's where, because we wanted a 5-year-old child to build and program their own robot. So we made sure that out of 3 programming interfaces, we have 2 don't require reading skills, because our idea was they need to start early and it shouldn't be dependent on their reading skills. But then what we realized that actually at schools, we have such a huge proportion of English language learners that having non-verbal programming interface is very helpful for them, because otherwise, like they're usually kind of like prevented from accessing some of the things they can in the lesson just because they don't speak English.
Right.
And like this is like very common, like the same challenge is in Austrian schools and in the US schools, where we have like right now we have like 20,000 of users in the US, and like we see the same challenge. And that's why like it's so exciting to hear when teachers say like those kids have an opportunity to shine, which they otherwise cannot, because like not speaking English doesn't mean they can't do like really cool things still with building and programming robots. yeah, so this is one, but like the other thing which comes into my mind, and like this is more like comparing to Ukraine, my experience in Ukraine to experience also like both in Austria and in the US. So like we have in Ukraine, like there is an idea that like math is the queen of sciences. I will not dispute. It's just like, yeah, let's leave it out there. And like people really kind of like knowing math is cool. And in a way, it is like, so it's like, I don't know like why I didn't grow up with this fear of math, which I quite often hear in Austria and also in the US, whereas everyone's like, oh my gosh, math, so boring, so terrible. Everything is like just kind of, I'm like, why? This is actually fun. I don't know. I'm still trying to understand like why that happens. But yeah, so like just something to kind of, I can tell you that there's countries which see it differently. And I think Indians, all like Indian culture is also more kind of like math is cool and just playing is cool.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because there is a huge thing that I know we're all trying to work through in the education space is working through that mindset where it's like I'm not good at math or I'm not a mathematician or and it's definitely a real mindset, and it's something that I know so many math educators are really working hard to like help students kind of lean into that and see themselves as being able to do it because they can, and I think the same thing, and we see the same stuff in computer science as we start to roll that out. We see that with the adults too, right? Like I didn't go to school to become a teacher to teach computer science. I can't do computer science. And it's like, you can, yes, you can. But that's the mindset that sometimes maybe unintentionally kind of feeds itself into the learning spaces. And then, we kind of have this, unintentional kind of narrative that we can and can't do things. So that's really fascinating. And so we talked a little bit already on this, and I think it kind of connects to, I think, the idea of bravery and seeing ourselves. I love that idea of working through the English language learners for so many students where maybe English is not their native language, or it could just be a learning difference as they're trying to pick up their reading and writing skills. What are some other goals or things that you're hoping for, as more schools start to use your robotics kits and your programs and things of that nature? I mean, because I think anybody that's involved in education, especially here in the United States, there are a lot of products out there, right? Like there are a lot of these companies trying to figure things out. And so what are you aiming for? I really love the language piece, but what are some other things? Because those are things that I think when you say it, I'm reminded like, oh yeah, duh. But I know I don't always articulate that all the time like I should. And so what are some other things that might help educators think through like, ooh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so like it's all about also like early exposure, because it's again like as with language learning, the earlier we become, the easier it is for children. Like children are just much more open in elementary school to exploring things, and by giving them an opportunity to explore, to create on their own, we hope to create a very like rich foundation for everything what they will meet later and like experience later when they will see, oh, this is like some STEM related subject, they will be able to relate to it and to connect to it. So our goal is to help children develop self-efficacy towards STEM and STEM careers and generally STEM subjects. Also developing their computational thinking and problem solving skills, because actually like another thing, of course, like our robot is always in the center, front and center, but it's a tool. And the goal is to help children develop skills, because it's not just about knowing what are parts of the robot or what are, like the possible commands in the programming sequence. It's about them thinking and developing their problem solving skills, their computational reasoning, their communication skills, their debugging skills, generally like productive struggle, like resilience to failure. And this is again like another important part, like being an engineer is painful, and like this is I see with our engineering team, because being an engineer, you fail all the time. You just kind of like you feel like until you figure it out, you will fail and you test and it doesn't work. And I'm always amazed how like our engineering team is like it's they have this really positive attitude, because that's what you need. Otherwise, you will not be an engineer. You just keep trying, and at the end, it will work. And that's, I think, like such an important skill set for engineers in general, but also for, because any person these days works with technology, and how many times technology doesn't work, and you need to, or like you don't know how to navigate this new interface, and you need to have like some patience and like some trying out and figuring. And that's another thing. We hope that we will help children build this resilience, and kind of like, so that if something doesn't work, they don't associate it with their failure, but just kind of keep trying. Yeah. So kind of starting very early, helping children build their skill set to be successful in the 21st century. But then also the second very important part, and like what we realized pretty early in our journey, that without teachers, we'll not get these experiences to students. So that's why we see teachers as also as users of our program. We are there to support them, and like we provide initial training. We provide like many ways to receive support, be it email, chat, call us. There is also a possibility to book mentorship sessions with us. We actually, every school that works with Robo Wunderkind, we offer teachers to flexibly book time with us, either come into our office hour and ask questions, or join one of our monthly Robo sessions where teachers come together and see what kind of questions other teachers are asking. But yeah, like our hope and like the impact I want to see, I want to also more teachers to discover that they can do computer science with Robo Wunderkind, and that they can do STEM, that we develop also that self-efficacy.
I love that. That's such a wonderful answer. And I know, at the time of this recording, we've got in Iowa an opportunity for districts with our STEM Scale Up grant. That's an option for teachers to apply for that and get that training and support and start to get some of that into their classroom. And I know there's lots of listeners that are not just in Iowa that listen to this podcast, and so as this has started to roll out into schools, what are some of your favorite like success stories or some of your ahas that you've heard? Because I think as we all know, some of the best buying is hearing about other classroom experiences, and I think you're aiming for that mark. I really love that, like starting kids early and young, and where they can start to see themselves doing these things and working on these skills before that mindset sets in that I can't, or that's not me, or I am not a computer. Like right away, at those young ages, they're doing it, and so I think that's. To me, that's really exciting. But I'm curious, as it's started to unfold and momentum's picking up, what have been some of the more awesome stories?
Yeah, like so one of actually like the largest user base we currently have in the US is in North Carolina, and it all started in Winston-Salem. So we met the team in Winston-Salem actually 2 years ago at the FTC in Orlando, like where I just came from. Like last week I was there again. And we started our partnership. It actually, they're a large school district. We started with a pilot in a summer camp, and I think it was like 3 or 4 teachers, and it was kind of like a learning experience for both of us, because like in elementary school there is so many ways to do STEM. You have summer camps, you have after school activities, you have some schools have STEM lessons, some schools have just media labs, some schools have integrated STEM into there. And that's kind of like was a very beautiful learning process for us. And but it's always like you can't really copy paste it. Like you can use some of the learnings, but like what we really enjoy is working together with our district partners and like together working and testing what is the best way to roll out the STEM program in this specific school district. And at Winston-Salem, we started with summer camp. Then in September of that school year, we scaled it to 6 or 7 schools. I think it was 6 schools. And then this year in September, we rolled it out to all 43 schools.
Oh, wow.
And and then there's also some smaller like camps. So like it's 47 buildings in the whole school district are using Robo Wunderkind. And this was beautiful. So like I spent in October, 1 week long in Winston-Salem. We were doing teacher training every day. And like I was kind of like, it's really amazing to see how together we can grow such a program, and like by working together, by giving teachers also a voice. And of course, like the challenges will always be there, and like it's not like we already overcame them all, but it was also beautiful to like in our teacher trainings we asked teachers also, so what they think worked, what didn't work that well, so like that we can learn from that, and going forward kind of build on those learnings and do it better. And like probably my favorite quote is one of the teachers said, like, this is my favorite time of the day.
There you go.
Students just love it. Yeah. And it's kind of, I know that teachers also, like what makes them happy is when they see their students happy. And we can create this playful atmosphere at school where they will also learn amazing things. That's, it's awesome.
It's beautiful when the educators feel that way. There's something when kids are engaged and they're excited about the learning. Man, that's when the magic happens. And I think anything we can, I'm a firm believer. I call it purposeful play. How do we get ourselves as the educators and the adults, but also the students, in that hands-on learning, and how do we get engaged with the content to kind of bring that learning to life and connect it to emotions, good and bad, when things don't work for the 1000th time, as well as when it finally does work. Like those are the things that we do remember. And so I think that's awesome. I want to be respectful of your time here, and you've shared so many, just wonderful things. And so I want to kind of come back full circle, connect some dots, and then I want to make sure that the listeners have a chance. Everything will be linked in the show notes to learn more about what you have going on and the opportunities. As we're always trying to find ways to help ourselves as educators in the classroom, as well as help our students with this learning. And so something I've been asking guests recently on this new season is kind of these two somewhat wrap up questions that kind of connect through all the things that we've shared. And so the first one is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh wow, good question. But actually, like it's just like something which is really on top of my mind recently. It's not like, we'll see whether it will get to the best advice, but like be like a goldfish. And the goldfish has a 10 seconds memory. They forget after 10 seconds. And this was an advice about failures, because and like maybe I can relate to it also as a female entrepreneur. Like sometimes you just start ruminating, oh, it didn't work well, like, oh, what went wrong. But actually the key is just to, okay, we made our learnings, let's just keep going. And like this was, if it failed, we'll like make our learnings and just keep going. And that's, I enjoy very much, just not to spend too much time thinking about everything what didn't work, or kind of like, oh, just like something wrong with this and that. No, just like, let's keep going. There is another day.
I love it. That's a really important piece, because we can get caught up, and we're all guilty of spending more time on the things that don't work or our mistakes than acknowledging the great things we do. And so sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. So I think having that memory of a goldfish can be really, really important. And I know
not always, but like in some
yes. But when you're trying to create, right? When you're trying to iterate, or you're working through trying to create a solution to something, and things just keep not working, you can really, really kind of get caught in the weeds. And I think sometimes it's like, okay, give yourself a minute, let that go, and let's plugging along. Yeah. And the last question I have is not really a question, but an opportunity for you to, rave about something awesome. So we've talked about a lot of great things. And so maybe there was something that you wanted to share that we didn't address, or maybe it's something just completely something that you're really enjoying. Maybe it's a book or a TV show, or it could be anything under the sun, but, ending on a little bit of a positive light here. So I'm going to give you a chance to rave about something really cool that's in your life, or wherever it might be. I'll let you take it however you like.
So I recently enjoyed very much the Netflix series For All Mankind. it's for those who don't know, it's about like alternative kind of like universe where US lost their battle for the moon landing, and Soviets were first on the moon, which would in turn encourage US to invest more in space exploration, and what kind of how it would influence everything else. And I found it so fascinating. Like I'm like, I do think that we need to invest more in space exploration. I think that science is like, like I'm just so grateful we have science and scientific, actually, like also like on personal level, I think we forget how we benefit from scientific achievements. And actually just like, okay, like a very small thing, or like a very personal story. So recently, like a fellow entrepreneur of mine, she has a lump in her brain which had to be removed. It was actually not too serious. Luckily, like she was lucky, it was discovered very early, and it was actually like it wasn't like a very dangerous kind, but generally they could diagnose, they could remove it. She was back to work, and she's a CEO of a startup. She was back to work in 2 weeks after the successful operation. And like actually my father died in 1985 back in Ukraine. He had also a lump in his brain, but there was no device in the Soviet Union to even look at what it was. And like I was talking to my mom is a doctor, and she was saying like we had these echo devices who could say there is something, but there was no way to kind of like, what is this? And like kind of opening it, like forget it, like it's not. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's been how many? Okay, like it's been already almost 40 years, but still, like, what is 40 years?
That's not much time. No.
And like we have like this really amazing progress in technology and science, and I think we should be all grateful. And I hope that we can inspire more people to go into technology and science and do more amazing things. Something to write about.
That is a perfect story, I think, as we kind of wrap all this up, because you're right, we do take a lot of things for granted. And I was just talking with a friend about the idea that you can have a stent put in your heart if you're having blockage or problems, and they literally will send you home the same day, and you're like back to normal operations. And I'm like, but you were like, they're messing with your heart. Like that is absolutely crazy and phenomenal and mind-blowing. And yeah, your story too, holy cow. Yeah, I mean, and I think this is what's exciting about the work that you're doing and spearheading and getting this work into schools, because we don't know who the next person is that's going to come up with that innovative solution. But it's also our jobs in education to provide opportunities for those kids to be that next person. And we can do that by getting, products and curriculum and lessons and training that you are providing into the hands of schools and teachers and students. So we can start that at a young age and keep building that out. So that might just be what's needed to keep them moving in a path that they might have otherwise shut down. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate all the stuff you've got going on. I know here in Iowa we're excited, but I also know there's other states and countries that are using your product, which is exciting, like North Carolina. So if people want to learn more, all this stuff will be at the show notes, and they want to know more about what you have going on, learn more about the company and the education solution to stuff you have, where are some of the best places for them to go? We'll make sure we get it in the show notes.
Yeah, so definitely our website, robowunderkind.com. Wunderkind is spelled German way, but like you will have it in the notes as well. So
yep.
And please subscribe to our newsletter. Also, social media, we're active on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Yeah, I think that's. But our newsletter is the best way to keep in touch. We'll keep you posted on all amazing things going on. And as you already mentioned, State of Iowa, like amazing opportunity to apply for a grant. It's all application window open until end of February. And State of New York, like schools out there, like you also should know, we joined the smart contracting system of BOSSes, which is educational agencies in the state of New York. And there is a very smooth way to come on board with Robo Wunderkind in the state of New York as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to grow our user base there too.
I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time to talk with me. You have a lot going on. You are a busy person. And so we'll make sure all that stuff is in the show notes. And so, Anna, thank you so much. Man, you've just inspired me and just kind of got me recalibrating my own thinking on the work that I do and the schools I support, and just reminded me of how important the work is moving forward and supporting schools to find ways to bring these opportunities to kids. And so while I believe in it, you've kind of rekindled some ideas and thoughts that I need to bring back to the forefront. So thank you for sharing your story and sharing your journey and all your insights. This has been just a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Aaron. My great pleasure.
Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.